A night without sleep that night. I didn't sleep for even a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same message glowing on Daniel's phone. I already missed last night. 5 simple words. But those 5 words had destroyed 13 years of trust. I turned toward Daniel. He was sleeping peacefully. His breathing was slow. His face looked calm. How could someone sleep so peacefully after breaking another person's heart? Or, maybe this wasn't the first time. Maybe he had learned how to live with lies. I quietly got out of bed and walked into the living room. Rain was still falling outside. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat near the window. For years, this house had felt like the safest place in the world. Tonight, it felt unfamiliar, almost like I was living inside someone else's life. I kept asking myself the same question. When did everything change? Was it months ago? Years ago? Or had I simply been too blind to notice? As the sun slowly began to rise, I made one promise to myself. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. First I needed the truth. The morning after, the next morning, Daniel walked into the kitchen wearing the same relaxed smile he always had. Morning. His voice sounded normal. Too normal. I forced myself to smile back. The kids came downstairs laughing. Our son couldn't find his backpack. Our daughter complained about homework. For a few minutes, life looked completely ordinary. Daniel joked with them. He poured cereal. He kissed our daughter on the forehead before leaving. Watching him be such a caring father confused me. Could someone who loved his children this much really be living a double life? Or, was he simply that good at pretending? Before leaving, he picked up his keys. I'll be late again tonight. Big client meeting. I nodded. No problem. He smiled. Thanks for understanding. If only he knew. I understood far more than he imagined. The silence that changed me the moment his car disappeared. The old Emily disappeared with it. Until yesterday, I would have called my best friend. I would have cried. I would have demanded answers. Not anymore. Emotion had already cost me enough. From this moment on, I would think before I acted. I opened my notebook. On the first page, I wrote 4 words. Find the truth first. That sentence became my mission. No accusations, no shouting, no emotional decisions. Only facts, only evidence. Because lies can argue, evidence cannot. The first small clue, I started cleaning the bedroom. Not because it needed cleaning. Because I wanted to notice things I had ignored before. His closet perfectly organized, his work bag, nothing unusual. His desk drawer, receipts, pens, business cards. Something caught my attention. A small parking ticket. The location wasn't near his office. It wasn't near any client Daniel had ever mentioned. It was from the other side of the city. The date matched one of his late meetings. Maybe it meant nothing. Or maybe everything. I folded the ticket carefully and placed it inside my notebook. Evidence number 1. A new version of me over the next few days. I stopped asking Daniel where he had been. I stopped asking why he came home late. Instead, I watched, I listened, I remembered. Something interesting happened. The less I questioned him, the more relaxed he became. He laughed more. He stopped hiding his nervousness. He believed I had accepted his explanation. That was exactly what I wanted him to think. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't making your enemy nervous. It's making them feel completely safe. Because safe people make mistakes. And I was waiting for his first mistake. The cliffhanger. 3 days later, Daniel left for another business meeting. Or at least, that's what he called it. I stood at the front window and watched his car disappear around the corner. Something inside me whispered, "Follow him." Immediately another voice answered, "No, what if you're wrong?" I looked down at the notebook in my hands. Inside it were the message, the parking ticket, the strange behavior, the late nights, the missing trust. Maybe I was wrong, buddy. I wasn't. I grabbed my car keys, locked the front door, took one deep breath, and for the first time in 13 years, I decided to follow my husband. I had no idea where that road would lead me, but deep inside, I already knew one thing. By the end of that day, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The decision, my hands were shaking as I held my car keys. For 13 years, I had trusted Daniel without question. Now, I was about to follow him like a stranger. A part of me still hoped I was wrong. Maybe the late nights really were work. Maybe the message had been sent by mistake. Maybe there was a simple explanation for everything. But another part of me, the part that had been awake all night, already knew the truth wasn't going to be simple. I started my car. A few minutes later, Daniel's black SUV passed in front of me. I waited until he was several cars ahead before pulling onto the road. "If you're innocent," I whispered to myself, I'll spend the rest of my life apologizing for this. But if you're lying. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Something didn't feel right at first. Everything looked normal. Daniel drove toward downtown, the same road he always took to work. I almost laughed at myself. Maybe I really had imagined everything. Maybe grief and fear had created a story that didn't exist. Then, at the last traffic light before his office, Daniel turned right. I frowned. That wasn't the way to his office. I had driven there dozens of times. He continued down a road I had never seen him use before. My heart began to race. I stayed 3 or 4 cars behind him, trying not to lose sight of his vehicle, trying not to let him see mine. The coffee shop. After 20 minutes, Daniel parked outside a quiet coffee shop. It wasn't a place near his office. It wasn't even close to downtown. He stepped out of the car. Instead of going inside, he stood outside checking his phone. He looked at his watch. Then he looked around. Not casually, carefully, as if he was waiting for someone, or making sure no one was watching. I lowered my head inside my car. My palms were sweating. A few moments later, a silver sedan pulled into the parking lot. A woman stepped out. She wore sunglasses and a long beige coat. I couldn't see her face clearly. Daniel smiled the moment he saw her. Not the tired smile he gave me every evening. This smile was different, warmer, happier. She smiled back. They stood close together talking, laughing. Then, she lightly touched his arm. It was such a small gesture, but it broke something inside me. No client touches your arm like that. No business meeting begins with smiles like those. The wrong conclusion. I reached for my phone. I wanted to take a picture, but before I could, another man walked out of the coffee shop. He hugged the woman. Daniel shook his hand. The 3 of them sat together. For nearly 40 minutes, I watched through my windshield. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they looked serious. Sometimes papers were passed across the table. Maybe this really was a meeting. Maybe I had judged too quickly. When they finally walked outside, the woman got into her own car. The man left in another direction. Daniel drove away alone. I leaned back in my seat, confused. Had I just imagined the chemistry between them? Or had I interrupted something before it became obvious? I didn't know anymore. And somehow, not knowing hurt even more. One tiny mistake. Daniel returned home earlier than usual that evening. He looked relaxed, almost cheerful. I finished work early, he said. We should order pizza tonight. The kids cheered. The evening felt strangely normal. While Daniel helped set the table, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. For just a second, his smile disappeared. Then he quickly turned the phone face down. I'll be right back. He stepped outside onto the back porch. I quietly moved closer to the kitchen window. I couldn't hear every word. Only pieces. No. Not tonight. She's starting to notice. My heart pounded. Who was he talking to? And who was Was he talking about me? A minute later, he came back inside, smiling again, pretending nothing had happened. But I had heard enough. He knew. He knew I was beginning to suspect him. The envelope. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. The mail arrived while Daniel was still at work. Among the letters was a plain white envelope. No company logo, no return address, only Daniel's name. I almost placed it on the kitchen counter without thinking. Then I noticed one word printed in the corner. Cottontail. I stared at it for several seconds. I knew opening someone else's mail was wrong. But then I remembered. Lying to your wife for years was wrong too. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was only one sheet of paper. There was no letter, no explanation, just an address, a date, and a time. Saturday 7:00 p.m. At the bottom, someone had written 4 handwritten words. Don't be late again. Again. That meant this meeting had happened before, more than once. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Saturday, 7 o'clock. For the first time, I didn't have to guess where Daniel would be. I already knew. And this time, I wasn't just going to follow him. I was going to find out exactly what he had been hiding. Because whatever waited at that address had the power to destroy everything I thought I knew about my husband. Marriage fell apart. Final part. The truth finally came out. The last piece of evidence. Saturday finally arrived. For 6 days, I had barely slept. Every hour felt longer than the last. At exactly 6:15 p.m., I parked my car across the street from the address written on the mysterious envelope. It wasn't an apartment. It wasn't a hotel. It was a private event hall. Luxury cars filled the parking lot. Men and women dressed in expensive suits walked inside. Daniel arrived a few minutes later. He wasn't alone. The same woman I had seen outside the coffee shop stepped out of another car. This time, there was no distance between them. Daniel reached for her hand. She smiled. They walked inside together. I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I picked up my phone and quietly recorded everything. For the first time, I had undeniable proof. The truth gets even bigger. I walked inside a few minutes later. No one stopped me. The room was filled with people celebrating. Then I saw the stage. A large screen displayed a photo. My heart nearly stopped. It was Daniel, standing beside the same woman. Below the photo were the words, "Congratulations on your new beginning." People were clapping. Some were congratulating them. Then I heard someone say, "You two make the perfect couple." Perfect couple. My husband, the man who had never divorced me, was introducing another woman as his future wife. At that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just an affair. He had built an entirely different life. The calmest decision of my life a month ago, I would have run onto that stage. I would have screamed. I would have cried. Not anymore. Instead, I quietly turned around and left. Because exposing someone isn't about making the loudest scene. It's about choosing the right moment. Over the next 3 weeks, I met with an attorney. I gathered every bank record, every hotel receipt, every phone bill, every photograph, every document. I never told Daniel what I knew. He continued living both lives, completely unaware that every lie was becoming another piece of evidence. The day everything changed a month later, Daniel invited both families to our house. He said he had an important announcement. Friends, relatives, neighbors, everyone arrived. Daniel stood in the living room with a smile on his face. "I've been working very hard lately," he began. "I wanted to thank everyone for supporting our family." Before he could continue, I stood up. "Actually, I think everyone deserves to hear the full story." The room became silent. I connected my laptop to the television. One by one, the photos appeared. Daniel holding another woman's hand, hotel receipts, phone records, bank transfers, the invitation to the celebration, every lie, every excuse, every secret. No one spoke. Daniel's face turned pale. He tried to interrupt. "Emily, please." I looked at him calmly. "For 13 years, I believed every word you said. Today, everyone will believe the truth." The lies collapsed. The room fell silent. His parents looked at him in disbelief. My parents couldn't hold back their tears. Our friends slowly realized that the man they admired had been living 2 completely different lives. Daniel tried to explain. "It isn't what it looks like." I smiled sadly. "Then tell us what it looks like." He couldn't. Because facts don't disappear when excuses begin. For the first time since I met him, Daniel had nothing to say. A new beginning 6 months later. Life looked very different. The divorce was finalized peacefully. The court ensured our children remained protected and cared for. I found a smaller home. It wasn't as beautiful as our old house, but it was honest. For the first time in years, peace returned. One evening, my daughter looked at me and asked, "Mom, are you happy again?" I smiled. The kind of smile that comes after surviving a storm. "Wes, I think I finally am." She hugged me tightly. At that moment, I realized something. Daniel hadn't taken my future away. He had only revealed the truth. And sometimes, the truth hurts before it heals. Final moral: if someone truly loves you, they never ask you to ignore your instincts. They never make you question your worth. They never build happiness on your pain. I lost the man I thought I knew, but I found something much more valuable: my self-respect, my peace, and the courage to begin again. Because revenge isn't always about hurting the person who hurt you. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is living a life they can never take away from you. The end.